Welcome to another episode of the Almost Local podcast. I'm Maria, and today I'm podcasting from Auckland, New Zealand. I am really excited for our new season where we dive into the challenges of life abroad. Join me as we delve into the ups and downs of expat life and the challenges of becoming a migrant. Today, I am happy to welcome our first guest of 2026. Sandra, who is currently living in Dubai. She is going to walk us through her life as an expat. As I have been sharing in the last episode of Almost Local podcast, we also have great things happening for the Almost Local community here in New Zealand. We are hosting our first workshop and our first coffee circles for expats, migrants, and newcomers to New Zealand. If you are living in New Zealand and want to join us for our very first Life in Between workshop, a small group of expats or migrants, check our Instagram or website, Almost Local, where we have more information about how to join us. This is a small event next Saturday, February 14th, 2026, here in Auckland, in our space in St. Heliers near the beach. Now let's begin this interview with Sandra. I'm sure you will find a lot in common with her. Many learnings, a really interesting journey from Sandra, who is living in Dubai. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm happy to be welcoming a guest. For me, it's great. This is not just a simple interview or podcast. It's a relaxed chat where we can share our experiences about living abroad. So can you share briefly where is home for you and how you started navigating this expat life? And also, where are you from originally?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here today because I think connecting overseas like this and learning from each other is really special. And it's what I love to do. So I'm originally Egyptian and Lebanese, but I very much consider myself a typical third culture child or third culture person. So that's the identity I relate to the most. I've been raised as an expat pretty much my whole life since I was 4. I was born in Cairo, but I've lived in many areas around the world, probably in most continents. Currently, I'm living here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. This is my third time back here in the UAE. I think it's a perfect city for a third culture kid because it's very much a third culture city. You feel comfortable as an expat here because about 80% of the population is expat, which is unique and around the world. Prior to living in the UAE, I was living in Hong Kong for 10 years. So I was very much an established expat there. And before that, I was living in Europe. Before that, I was living in Dubai. I also studied in Montreal, Canada. I'm married to a British person, so very much international in my background. Currently, I'm living here
in Dubai. And you mentioned, Sandra, that you love the expat community and the expat experience and the environment. What is that you love about it? Because some people might have never experienced what it's like to be in this journey, like from 4 years old, like it's been forever for you. So how is that? What is that makes you love it?
I think for me, it's really the people. The most beautiful part of being an expat is being exposed to the variety and complexity of people's backgrounds and cultures, their personalities, and the journeys that they've been through. And for someone like me, who's naturally very curious and very interested in people's journeys and people's lives, being an expat is really fueling my curiosity and my interest in humans and connecting with humans. That's what I love to do the most is I love to connect and get to know people deeply. And that's something that I think is unique in the expat life. You're almost every day meeting different people from different backgrounds and connecting with them and learning about their cultures and their backgrounds. And that's what I really love about being an expat.
It's being curious about others. Do you feel like, because for me, it's the more I meet people from other places, the more curious I become. It's like a cycle that keeps growing. Do you have this
Yeah.
feeling as well?
Yeah, I think so. Just when you think you've met someone from every place in the world, someone new pops up. I remember I was on a women's walk organized by a community here. I joined the walk and I was walking with two ladies and they were speaking in a language I wasn't really familiar with. And then when they were speaking in English, I noticed their accent. And so I asked them, "Are you from Malta?" The ladies were shocked, like, how could you possibly know that we're
How's that?
from Malta specifically? It sounds a little bit Italian, but a little
Mm.
bit Arabic. I noticed the accent and I realized that they're Maltese and learned a little bit more about their culture. And it was really interesting because they started talking about where their language came from. And I learned that they have a little bit of an Arabic influence in their language. So related on that topic, just when you think you've met everybody in the world, a new culture comes up and it's very interesting and you start to learn more.
It's like a learning opportunity. It's like the university of life, I would say, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Sandra, you love the expat community and you've been always exposed to it.
You know,
I've met a lot of people who would return to their home countries and feel like, okay, this is it. This chapter is over. And am I going to adapt to not being in this expat environment?
I think for me, sometimes from the people that I've met, people yearn for their home country, but then when they go back, they don't connect with that anymore because that was maybe their previous identity or their previous personality. And, identity for me is like a moving train. Each part of your life is forming a new layer of your identity, or maybe like a canvas. And it's one canvas, but each part of your journey or experience is like adding a new coat of paint or a new
Yeah.
color onto the canvas.
Mm.
And the canvas is never the same as what it was before. It changes each time. I think if you're looking at yourself now versus how you were 20 years ago versus how you are in 20 years, it's going to change. Sometimes when people go back to their home country, they feel like an alien or a foreigner in their own country. I haven't personally gone back to where I was born, which is Egypt, and lived there. But I can imagine, because I've visited, that I wouldn't necessarily feel like a true Egyptian because my accent is not perfect in terms of Egyptian Arabic or even the way I dress or my mannerisms. A lot of people get very surprised, even Egyptians, when I say I'm Egyptian or I'm Lebanese. They don't really connect me to that
Yeah.
culture. So it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I always say that identity changes with different life stages. When you are a
Correct.
teenager, you study, you might get married, have kids, your first jobs, etc. We all go through different stages. I have a theory that for us who live abroad, these stages are more visible or evident. Do you feel like it is something like that?
I think the significance of the stages, I think one of the reasons the stages are more pronounced, those transition stages, is perhaps because you don't have the normal social support system of people you've known since you were born, your neighbors, your fixed home, or your parents or families. A lot of us who live abroad are on our own. And yes, we've got friends, but even the friends, I can speak for myself in Dubai, are coming and going all the time. This city is transient by nature. Where I lived before, Hong Kong, is transient. And even to some extent, London, where I lived before, is also transient,
Mm.
which means people are constantly moving in and out. And there's a lot of changes happening. I do agree with you, Maria, that transition points can be more pronounced because you have to rely on yourself and perhaps your nuclear family, if you have one. Let's say, for example, you were having a baby for the first time in your hometown. You've had a couple of friends who have also had babies, and your mom is there, maybe your aunties, and even your grandma. And you're in the neighborhood that maybe you were born in as well. And maybe you even have the same family doctor. So all of those things give a certain stability that is not there when you have a baby on your own, like I did in London. I didn't have my family there. I didn't have any good friends. I didn't have I wasn't in a neighborhood I was familiar with. I just moved there 1 year before. And so because of all the fluctuations and changes, you sometimes feel a little bit isolated or a little bit alone, even though you're surrounded by people. And I feel that that's what sometimes makes that transition point a little bit more significant and a little bit more challenging. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's something you can relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think that you already have your system in place, right? And you don't even question it when you are just living in the same place and that's your home and nothing needs to be questioned. But when you are changing different countries and environments, this is a different layer of awareness, right? You are really paying attention to what's happening in that moment. Let's talk a bit about the theme of this month. We are talking about momentum. How do you feel like what can help to navigate life abroad in a moment of crisis, or like you were saying, these crossroads to keep momentum and don't get stuck? What are the things that you talk with from your personal experience and that you hear from other expats?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by telling you what helped me when I was
Mm,
stuck. I think one of the first things that you lose when you're stuck is your ability to listen to your inner voice and your
mm,
ability to tap into yourself, or at least that's what's happened for me in the past. I think it's important to cultivate some kind of practice, whether it's a solitude practice, a journaling practice, or a meditative practice that can help you get back to yourself. Now, that self doesn't mean your old self, it means your current self, which means you tap into that inner voice or intuition, actually understand where you are now and where you want to go. Oftentimes, when you're stuck, it's because you're either stuck in the past or thinking too far into the future and you're not able to be present in the moment to take that step. And so you're stuck and you're not able to move from the past or towards the future. For me, tapping into your inner voice, listening to that is the first step that I would advise other people who are feeling stuck. And I think even a simple practice like picking up a journal and asking yourself one question in the morning. How do I feel today? What's my intention for the day? And at the end of the day, evaluating what went well today. Having a moment of quiet and tapping in and answering those questions can really help. So that's point number one is I would
mhm,
recommend people to tap into the inner voice. The second one would be to connect, to go out if you are feeling stuck moment, to connect with other people, either other people who are perhaps doing something that you would like to do. Like, for example, if you want to get back to work, maybe start going to some communities of other women who are either job seeking or other women who are perhaps already doing the kind of job or in the kind of industry that you want to be in. So, connect with others. Or even if it's not that you want to go back to work, but let's say you want to find a hobby that you're passionate about, perhaps start connecting with other people. So let's say you're into art or you used to be into art, connect with other people in the art community. My second advice would be to connect with people. And
mhm.
then the third thing that I find is really helpful to get unstuck is to get back to habits that you want to foster to make the change that you want to have. So let's say, for example, you want to be healthier. Start building a cornerstone habit or a specific habit that will help you to become healthier. So perhaps, for example, when I moved to the UAE and I was on a health journey, I started doing yoga again. For me, that became a cornerstone habit. And I started with one session a week, then added a second or a third session. Before I knew it, I was back into my yoga habit. That helped me with mindfulness and becoming more calm. It helped me build other habits in my life, which made me more healthy. I was eating better. I was sleeping earlier. I was more mindful. So I was less stressed. And so finding a cornerstone habit that can help you get unstuck would be the third piece of advice that I would give to people if they're feeling stuck.
And the first one, you were saying your inner voice. I was yesterday at Oprah's Winfrey's show here in Auckland, and she was talking about two things that are really, I think one of them is connected to what you're saying. The other one I would love to talk about is the intention of everything that you do. Just go back to intention and reflect a bit on why you're taking the actions that you're taking. So she was sharing about this and the inner voice. She talked about whisper that you have, like whispering that I think it's the word whisper. It's nice because it's like if you want, you can just avoid and don't listen to it, right? And just ignore it. And how important it is to connect to that inner voice.
I love that idea of the whisper. That's beautiful because we have so much noise in our life, inner noise from the things we need to do, stress, or the negative voice that we have about ourselves. So that can create a lot of noise that drowns out the whisper. And sometimes it's other factors, external factors, people telling us we can't do something, or society's voices that can sometimes also drown out that inner whisper. So I think that's actually a really beautiful analogy.
Have you had any moments where, although you know all of this, looking back, think, I was definitely needing this advice? Have you been through a challenge in this expat journey where you felt, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's right, what's wrong. I don't have the answers anymore. Have you felt like losing this momentum in your journey?
Yes. I think everyone has those moments, and it's really important to talk about them because I think a lot of the time, especially with the social media, let's say generation that we're in, it's easy to look at how beautiful and perfect everyone's life is and not really see what's happening behind the scenes, to see how did this person who you're seeing is so perfect get to this point, including the celebrities, the coaches, the mentors, the people we idolize. They've all had moments in their life where they were like crying on the bathroom floor. And I think that there is no such life as a perfect life, which has all gone smoothly and in an upward trajectory. I feel like the ups and downs of life are the moments where we form our character and have our learnings. To answer your question, yes, of course, I have had moments of feeling deeply lost and deeply stuck. One such moment that I would love to share with you is when I was in Hong Kong and I just moved there, I had a young baby. And it was in that moment that I really felt a lot of culture shock. It was the first time in my life that I was actually experiencing culture shock, which was interesting for me because I had lived, as I mentioned to you, in the UAE, in Montreal, in London, in Paris, and I had never experienced culture shock before. And I think it was really the contrast in cultures that was so stark between my culture, or, what I would consider the traits that I identify with, and the culture that I was in Hong Kong. So that was the first thing that I found really difficult, was the culture and adapting to that culture. Hong Kong is a very busy, frenetic city.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm there with a new baby. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. It felt very foreign to me. It took a long time for me to feel settled and comfortable. To add on top of that, I had put a lot of pressure on myself to get back to work because I had always been somebody who had achieved a lot or wanted to achieve a lot, and I was quite ambitious. I was very much looking to get back into a career, and it was only closed doors. I had sent out many CVs, tried to knock on many doors, and I was either getting silence or rejections. And that was really difficult for me. I remember one particular moment where I had finally gotten my big break, and I was sitting in front of a young lady, a headhunter, who was actually specialized in marketing, which was my background and specialty. I remember her looking at my CV and saying to me, particularly my career gap, and saying to me, what have you been doing for the last few years? And I explained to her my human story, my background about moving to Hong Kong and how difficult it had been and how I was really proud of myself because I'd gotten settled and my baby was starting to go to nursery and that I was really ready for my new challenge now. She took my CV, passed it across the table and said to me, I don't think I can place you. You haven't done anything over the last few years. No employer is going to look at your CV. Just go out and get some free experience or do some volunteering and then come back because your experience is not valid. And it was like the worst, it was like really a punch in the stomach. And I remember I went outside and I just burst into tears because she had reinforced everything I believed about myself, that I was worthless, that I had no value, that I was a useless person in society now, that I wasn't contributing. These are all such harsh things. And I'm kind of ashamed to say that I thought that about myself, but she basically just verbalized everything I believed about me. And it was a really low moment. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this can relate.
And you had just had a baby. How old was your baby?
At that point, she was 18 months.
Yeah. So really, you were just moving to a different country, different language, totally different culture. And on top of that, you were trying to start over in such a foreign country. It was one of the biggest challenges, would you say? Did you begin to hate the place? Like, it can happen, right?
I mean, I have to say,
blaming everything and just... How long had it been since you moved when this happened? Like, how many months had you been living there?
Yeah, I mean, it was less than a year into me being in Hong Kong. And I have to say, it's at those moments in your life where you can crumble and just give up. And that's definitely what I felt like doing emotionally. I just thought that was my last opportunity. It's not going to happen. And I remember thinking, I'm just a mom. This was the word that came to my mind. I'm just a mom. And this is one of the reasons it really sowed the seed for what I do now. And the reason I've taken up coaching to support women in the situation I was in, because I don't want women to feel like that. I don't want any woman to ever feel like I did in that moment and feel like they can't get out of that situation. I did feel like I was just going to give up. But I also think that moment gave me that motivation to then go out and prove her wrong. Because inside, I knew that my experience, my skills, my desire or my drive was more than what it said in that gap in that CV. But I didn't know yet how I was going to do that. Sometimes the naysayers or the negative people or the people who put you down can be a source of motivation for you if you are able to channel that negative energy into a positive direction. And I think that I was somewhat determined, but also somewhat lucky to be able to then make my next move, which then helped me to eventually get back into a career and get back into a situation which I was more content with. I did use it as a little bit of fuel to do that, but sometimes you need a little bit more support. And that everyone's got a different way of handling this kind of situation.
So these difficult moments, these challenges are what we always talk about, the ups and the downs, right? And to go up, you probably need to go down first so that you can go up. That's part of life. So looking back to that experience and your time in Hong Kong, so challenging for you with the baby and trying to start a new life and find a job in such a difficult culture. Now you look back to that, and do you feel like you would still choose to go through that difficult experience? Like that shaped you in a way to help you actually get momentum as well? Like not get stuck in that negative situation and this person putting you down,
Mm.
do you feel like you would say that helped me and I would choose to have that in my life as part of who I am now?
Such a beautiful question. And I think for me, that question is a question everybody should ask themselves when they're going through a bad moment,
Mm,
recalling the last bad moment they went through and how it shaped them is actually a really good way to give context and to give them power in the challenge that they're facing now. Because I think most people would look back at a crisis and say, I would choose to go through that again because of who I am now or what I've learned now. For me, that's definitely the case. I feel like that mini crisis, um, and really it was an identity crisis for me, is the reason that I do what I do now. And I love doing what I do now. And I don't think I would have reached where I am now and had the motivation to do what I do had I not personally experienced that identity crisis, that feeling of being stuck, of being lost, of having that very dark moment. I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing now. And I don't think I would have found my meaning and purpose in life as I did right now. So I do appreciate and I am very grateful for that moment because that helped alongside other moments as well. It helped me to plant the seed for where I am now.
for someone who is listening and or watching, and they might be stuck or struggling with difficult moments, not being able to find a good job or not feeling welcomed in a new country, what kind of message or learnings do you think you have now with all the experience you had previously?
Yeah. I mean, just kind of going back a little bit to what I was suggesting before, I think the first most important thing to do if you're at that crossroads or you're feeling stuck is to build your self-awareness. And there's many ways that you can build your self-awareness, but a really good one is some kind of solitude practice or self-reflection practice, drawing attention to yourself and understanding where am I now and where do I want to go and where is that gap? A lot of the time, our unhappiness lies in where our expectations are versus where we are now. That gap is where our unhappiness is. If you can narrow the gap
Mm.
between your expectations and where you want to go or where you are, then you can become more content. I think it's about understanding these questions. The second thing I would recommend is find a community or even a person where you can find that support. The problem shared is a problem half. And so I think it's really important if you can share your concerns, issues, or what you're facing with another person or a group that can really help you get unstuck through the support. And that takes time. The third thing I would say is be kind to yourself. Often, when we tune in to that inner voice, we find that we are very critical of ourselves. You know, why haven't I got a job yet? Why haven't I settled in yet? Why haven't I made any friends yet? And so, managing those expectations are really important, as I mentioned, in terms of your contentment or your happiness. Be kind to yourself, pay attention to the voice that you are using in your mind, because we are the ones that listen to ourselves the most. You know, we are literally listening to our
Yeah.
inner narrative all the time. If your inner narrative is super negative, that is going to keep you stuck. It's about changing that narrative, finding somebody that can help you, whether that's a mentor, coach, or therapist, or more experienced friend that can really help as well.
It can really harm your experience. You could end up hating a place or thinking nothing works or even blaming yourself. But like you said, I think there is no perfect place and it's just a bit of expectations over where you're at the moment. So
Right. Yeah.
How did your story continue in Hong Kong? Were you able to connect and find a community to, again, gain momentum in this particular moment where you were stuck and not being able to find your place in your professional life?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting point, and something that I want to share with people is if you are feeling stuck, try to pivot. Often when we're stuck, it's because we're just trying the same thing over and over again, or just not trying something. So what I did in that moment is I said, well, look, the conventional route of trying to find a job is not working for me. And, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. For me, it was like, I need to do something different. I got shaken out of that sameness. And so what I did is I joined some communities. So I joined, for example, the British Chamber of Commerce. I joined a community that does corporate social responsibility, and I was going to conferences. So I started to kind of pursue a little bit like my interests, what I was passionate about. And through the British Chamber of Commerce, I met a lady who had suggested to me to apply to a job in the British consulate, which I felt I was underqualified for. So when I applied for that job, I was the underdog by far. But because I already had this connection with someone that got to know me, that had a belief in me, she was able to vouch for me. She was able to say, you can do this. I believe in you. And so I actually did get the job, which was the head of marketing job for the regional position. I was definitely the worst, in my mind anyways, the most underqualified candidate, the least experienced candidate by far. But I did have a lot of drive. I was able to communicate well what I had to offer. Because of that, I was able to get this job. And from there, I was able to build back my career and build back my identity. I had a 6-year experience in that job, which was part of my journey to where I am now. Eventually, I had an executive coach, and that was my first exposure to coaching. And that was the beginning of my own coaching journey. So
I think it's so inspiring. I love everything that you're sharing. And for some people, you make it sound like, well, this happened, so I did that. Some people might say it was easy for you because you're driven or this and that. It's not like that, right? For some people, it might be more difficult, but the connections with others, it's where it all began, right? You didn't know exactly what the outcome would be, but you started to connect with people in an authentic way because this person who met you knew you were probably talking openly about who you are. And it is a way of building without getting stuck as well, right? This connection with others, I think.
there are two things I want to mention here to acknowledge the fact that it will be difficult. It will be challenging. And
Yeah.
it's
That's
like
a given.
saying that's a given. It's not about belittling how challenging things are going to be. And also, it's also not about denying each person's challenges and their own experiences and how difficult it is for them. So maybe networking is much easier for me because of my personality type. And maybe someone else may not be as comfortable with networking. Maybe that's not the route that they take. Maybe it's about connecting with their neighbor or a fellow school mom or connecting with a little art group. For each person, the connection is going to be different. What I share is my own experience that fit with my personality. That was a step I was able to take because of what I'm comfortable with. But for someone else, I liked what you said, which is about that step. It's about moving forward. And the key theme here is momentum. For me, it's about putting one foot in front of the other. And maybe it's even crawling before you can walk. As long as you are moving and as long as you are trying, because the worst thing you can do is just do nothing. Because when you do nothing is going to land in your lap. And any change that you want to make in your life is going to come with discomfort because change is not comfortable for human beings because we are wired to maintain the same thing because that is what is known. That is how we survived, is just by maintaining the same thing. So change becomes uncomfortable for us. And sometimes change to us is like a tiger attacking us, and we feel like the adrenaline and we feel the struggle and we feel like we want to fight the change. But actually, if you push through that uncomfortable feeling, the fear, the stress,
Yeah.
the anxiety, on the other side, that change might be the best thing that's ever happened to you. Just to say it will come with challenge. It was very challenging for me, for example, to completely pivot my career. This was not easy. I had so much self-doubt, imposter syndrome. And that is how it is for most people when they make a big change in their life. It will come with feelings of discomfort and some fears and some challenges. As long as you tap into your inner voice and rely on other people and get the support and ask for help, it makes that change a lot.
Yeah. And it's like you're saying, it's understanding that it will be difficult in different ways. And like you said, depending on your personality, your style, but challenges will come your way. That's how it is. Because like you were also saying, when you step out of your comfort zone, you are exposing yourself to things that are going to be different. So I was asking you about the timeline. When was the moment where you had this not pleasant experience with the recruiter? And it was like a year after moving, more or less, you said. It was quite recent. So that also didn't help because everything was quite raw. You were just new to all these difficult moments and challenges happen in the first year. Try to put them in perspective because you are not completely yourself as well, right?
Correct.
Since you are a mother, I've been comparing my new experience here back in New Zealand for these 5 months. I was talking to a friend and I was saying, I feel like I have just gave birth, and I'm back to the house with the baby. Nothing feels the same. I'm trying to understand what's happening. It is a phase. It's also a phase with the baby. The truth is you don't know. But it is like a crisis. How would you describe it as a coach? Which word would be more accurate?
No, you described it beautifully. I think it is a crisis. When you are in that moment, it's a crisis. It's all about your own experience. Maybe to someone else, like someone can pick up and move to a country every 2 years. And for them, it's just like, okay, they start again. They just follow the same routine. They do it again. They do it again. But we're all completely unique human beings with different capacities, different character traits, and different experiences. And so for us, at that moment, when I was sitting in front of that headhunter, that was a crisis for me. For you, the moment where you came back and you're a completely changed person, it is a crisis for you. So I think it's really important to acknowledge when we are going through a low point or a moment of crisis, because I think society puts this pressure on us, even as a new mom. We've got to come out and we've got to be skinny and we don't have to have stretch marks and we've got to have perfect makeup and we've got to be wearing high heels. I mean, this is so unrealistic. These expectations that are put on us as mothers, whether we are expat mothers or not, is just so unrealistic. And I think it's really been exacerbated and made worse by social media because we have all these influencers and these royals and these people coming out and they're looking perfect after having a baby. And it's the same with moving countries. It can feel like a real crisis to our identity. I think it's about acknowledging that and saying, okay, this is where I am now. Where do I want to be? Who is that future self that is going to be really comfortable here, that is going to embrace this experience? And how do I build little habits and micro steps toward that person? And it might take a really long time. And that's okay. Because this is where I want to get to. One technique we use in the workshops that I do is writing a letter to your future self. Let's say yourself in 3 years, looking back, telling yourself now, what would you say to yourself now if you were to look back 3 years? It's not an easy exercise, but it's quite a powerful one. We often do a little meditation before, and it really helps because you said a word which is very powerful, which is perspective. Sometimes we lose perspective when we are in a crisis.
But there is hope. The way you talk gives me peace, like things are possible.
It is possible. We are not going to just be where we are now. Things are going to shift. Your emotions are going to shift. They're going to pass. I often liken them to the sky. When you're in the crisis, the sky is dark and there's a lot of clouds and maybe there's rain and maybe it's cold, but no weather, even England, doesn't stay like that. The weather is going to change.
Yeah.
So you can help, you can do things, you can get warmer, you can put a raincoat, you can do all those things to help yourself. You can move indoors, you can do all these things. Or sometimes the weather just shifts and things start to look up, right? It's up to you. It's always your choice how you react to a stimulus. It is always, sometimes it doesn't feel like it's our choice. The situation is not our choice. The stimulus is not our choice. So if you've moved countries and that's, you're following your partner or this decision was taken out of your hands, that's not your choice. But how you react to it is your choice. And you can sit and sulk like I did. I absolutely cried and I sulked and I hated the place. I did go through that and that's okay as well. Yeah. But eventually the reaction is your choice.
I love to be honest about it, right? Like you said, it's not social media. It's not just shiny and lovely and perfect. So going to our end of our conversations, and I think could speak for hours. Coffee. I like the letter for your future self. Say to your youngest self, if you were able to send a message to your younger 20-year-old self about what was going to happen and your advice, what would you say to that youngest Sandra?
I would definitely go back to the moment where I had my first child. That's the moment I needed a comforting or supportive voice to give me advice. I would say to her, connect to your inner voice, tap into your intuition, follow your passion, and not be so concerned with the noise of societal expectations and the immense pressure we put on ourselves as new moms, as women, as a woman trying to get back to work, to cut out the noise, to cut out the expectations, and to just tune in to your inner self, to tune into your passion, your purpose, and to listen and not to put so much pressure on yourself. I would definitely say to be in community, to connect with other people and to allow others to help you and support you. Because later, a decade later, I had incredible support from an incredible coach and a fantastic mentor and some really good friends who had experience. That really helped me a decade later to go towards what I'm doing now and what I'm passionate about now. So find a mentor, find a coach, find a supportive friend, and ask for help. It's okay to ask for help.
Sandra, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to meet you and learn from you and share with our listeners your experience, your journey, and your experience as a coach, right? Because you also have a vision from being a coach. So thank you very much, Sandra. We include your Instagram so that people can see what you do, because I think it's really amazing how this can help expats, right?
My Instagram is at Third Culture Coach. As I described before, my identity is a third culture kid. So my handle is Third Culture Coach. So I support expat women to help them find their passion and purpose and to go back to work through my program with my partner called Empower. So that's what I do. And that's my Instagram. Really happy to connect with expats like yourself. I just enjoy learning about people's journeys and seeing how I can support as well. Thank you so much for your time today. I really loved our conversation, and your theme of momentum fits really well. I love what you're doing with this podcast because I think it can really help just by listening to this podcast and the different guests that you have on there. It can really help women who are in our situation, living in a different culture from where they were born. And it can really make them feel less alone because when you hear someone else's journey and learn what they've been through, it makes you feel a lot less isolated and a lot less lonely, which I know is a challenge to a lot of people who live abroad. Thank you for doing what you do as well, Maria.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much. We have enough with our challenges and difficulties. Why would we have to do it alone, right?
Correct.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for all your inspiring content. And I hope that we can do another podcast in another time with talking about other. So thank you so much.
I would love that. And maybe one day you come to Dubai, you're welcome and happy to show you around.
I would love that too. That would be wonderful.
Great.
Sandra, thank you so much. Bye-bye. I hope you found this interview with Sandra inspiring and that you could reflect on your own journey. If you've been following the Almost Local podcast, thank you so much for listening. Remember, we have the blog where we share all of these insightful conversations with expats and migrants. Thank you once again, and I will see you in the next episode. And now, as usual, I'm off to my coffee this morning. Bye now.